Chris Brown, Steve Tasker, joined now by senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, and Greg's weekly segment presented by Scott Lawnyard, an official commercial site work partner of the Buffalo Bills. All right, we got a big one in prime time here, Greg, and both teams trying to come off back-to-back losses and end their respective losing streaks. Both quarterbacks also struggling of late. So, I don't know. It's the classic something's got to give here, Greg. Who fixes their problems first?
Well, you know, it's funny, Brownie. I kept hearing that Josh Allen's a turnover machine. He hasn't thrown any interceptions, right?
That's correct.
There you go. So
we could, give me the turnover, Josh, and 4-1 instead of 3-2, right?
Right, exactly. Well, where do you want to start, Brownie?
I would say both quarterbacks have struggled against the blitz of late, which is kind of interesting. Josh usually feasts on teams that blitz him. I can't pretend to know Aaron's full history against the blitz, but I would tend to think it's not with a passer rating of about 54, which is what it was last week. So maybe explain what is plaguing these two quarterbacks who typically do well in blitz situations.
Well, let's start with Rodgers, because the team he played last week, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Bills' defense is really nothing like the Vikings' defense. Maybe they'll take a piece here and there because it was effective, but the Vikings could well be the toughest defense in the NFL to play against because of what they do pre-snap and then what happens post-snap. So they're really difficult. They line up in a lot of 6- and 7-man fronts, sometimes 8-man fronts. You obviously have to protect it when you see that. So very often you're forced to keep a back or a tight end or both in to protect. And then often they'll drop out and rush 3, and you get kind of stuck. So the team that the Jets just played is not really a barometer of what the Jets are likely to see from the Bills' defense, but it's certainly one reason why Rodgers struggled. And you certainly, as great a pure thrower as Rodgers is, you certainly don't want him dropping back 55 times in a game. I mean, his lower body is not what it was in terms of his movement ability. So, I think that that's a little bit of an issue for him right now. On the other side, I think the issues with the Bills' offense go beyond just the blitz, guys. When I watch that tape, and as you know, I study the Bills in great detail. One of the things that really stands out to me, and to be honest, if I can be honest, I think this is really an offensive coordinator issue. Although Josh has a part to play in this as well. There's not really an intermediate passing game in the Bills' offense right now. And I think that's as much of a scheme issue as it is a quarterback issue. And I thought, we both know that Josh always walks a fine line between playing from the pocket effectively and getting out of the pocket prematurely. And I thought last week he stepped over that line. But I think that they need to have an intermediate passing game that is schematic, not just where it's one-on-one. I mean, you look at some of these other teams in the league that have really good pass games, like the Lions, and all that is schematic. And I think you're trying to define the reads and the throws for Josh Allen as cleanly as you possibly can. To me, I think that's where some of it starts. And then Josh clearly, has to slow down. I thought last week he played way too fast mentally. I thought it resulted in too much unnecessary movement. There were a few clean throws that were there that he did not process. And then his ball placement last week wasn't, what it normally is. So, I think there's a number of issues, and, they can be cleaned up, obviously, but we'll see. They're playing a pretty tough defense. The Jets have a very good defense, and they rush the quarterback very, very well.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the narratives that's coming around the Bills, and because of the way the Bills entered the season with the kind of weapons they have on the outside, people are saying, well, it got to be those guys outside. They're not getting separation, that kind of stuff. And now teams are starting to blitz Josh a lot and play a lot more man against the Bills than other teams. Kind of delve into what all that means.
Yeah, that's a great point, because when you do blitz, obviously there are man blitzes and there are zone blitzes. So teams will man blitz more now because what that means is they'll match up man to man on the receivers and they'll force them to have to run good routes and at least give Josh Allen a place to throw the football. And if they can't win at all, and win is a relative term, obviously we're not talking about 5 yards of separation in the NFL, but I mean just win enough that Josh feels comfortable delivering the football, then that's obviously what needs to happen. But I think you'll see more pressure and you'll see more man coverage because until you can beat it, you're going to get it. And obviously Josh is the kind of quarterback that when he sees opposing jersey color, he tends to move. And sometimes exactly how he's going to move and you can react to that effectively as a defense. I mean, I certainly don't have numbers in front of me. This is what teams do when they have 20 people that can watch tape. But my guess is 95% of the time he's going to move to his right. And teams know that. And therefore they can then defend that as well. They can sort of force him to move, knowing where he'll move and be in position to defend that.
Right. And that is why they're struggling as much as they are on third down as well.
Yeah.
This is a team that led the league in third down conversion percentage each of the last 2 years, and this has been a problem since week one. I mean, they are now 25th in the league in third down conversion rate, and 2/3 of the time they're facing 3rd and 6 or more this season.
Yes.
I mean, there's only one. The Jacksonville game is the only game where they had more than 3 third down conversions in any one game. It was also the only time they were over like 33% conversion rate. I realize that a lot of that is baked into what happens on first and second down, but even on the money down, they're not executing. It's kind of eye-opening, and I'll admit it, I'm troubled by it.
Yeah, no, it's a definite concern. I mean, just following up on sort of what I was saying, one thing you're not seeing much of at all is kind of, by NFL standards, relatively easy throws. Everything seems to be hard. Wouldn't you agree, Brownie? I mean,
Since week 3, yes.
Yeah, you're the play-by-play guy, so you're seeing all the games, up close and personal. Everything seems to be a struggle. There don't seem to be any dropbacks where you see Josh drop back, hit a receiver who's, as I said, by NFL standards, relatively open. It just nothing seems comfortable. I know we've spent a lot of time, all of us, and believe me, I'm a believer that there has to be some semblance of balance in an offense. Again, balance is another one of those relative terms depending on your specific offense. But, sometimes I wonder if, hey, maybe we need to kind of let Josh get comfortable and do the things he's comfortable doing. And as you joked, but you weren't really joking, I don't think, if that or Steve, you might have said it, if that means he throws a pick here and there, you know what? So be it. But let him be comfortable playing the game because right now everything seems hard.
The Bills have also, and Brownie brought this up earlier in the week, and certainly it was a function of how that game went in Houston, but they've run the ball on 20 out of 26 first downs. Their run game has become really a massive part of what they do offensively.
No question.
Speak to that a little bit. Plus, with James Cook, questionable, and we don't know what his status is going to be this week because of a toe injury, how that affects things. And what do you think the Bills' run game, first of all, what do you think it means for the passing game and Josh? And secondly, what about this Jet defense stopping it?
Well, again, maybe if Joe Brady was here, he'd tell me I'm wrong. But my sense is there's not as much of a marriage between the run game and the play action pass game as I personally feel I'd like to see. Now, again, maybe I'm wrong, but I've watched a lot of tape in my time, and I feel that if you're going to run the ball with the commitment that they've shown, I mean, even last week in a game that they fell behind, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Cook end up with 20 carries? I think he had 20 carries.
Yes, he did. 20 for 82.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've been committed to running the football, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think now you have to work off that. Another thing that I think they sort of have to, in my mind, again, I'm just giving you my point of view. Reasonable people can disagree, but my point of view, I think they need to reassess the extensive use of 6 O-line personnel. I think they need to develop a pass game that is more multiple, that is more schematic. Maybe they're working toward that. Obviously, they've got new receivers this year. This stuff does take time. Believe me, I know that. I've been doing this a long time. People like to think everything happens in 2 days. It doesn't happen that way. But I think that that's what they have to be working toward. They have to be working toward a situation, particularly against zone coverage. They're not going to get man on every snap, where the route concepts can defeat the coverage and you get clean throws for your quarterback. You don't see many of those in their offense. Certainly not in the last number of weeks. And even in the early weeks, I didn't think that that was the way they were scoring with, just clean throws all the time. I think that's what they need to work toward. But the run game they're clearly committed to, that's fine. But now you need something off that.
Yeah. Keon Coleman has obviously flashed with limited opportunities with the football.
Yeah.
Do you think, even in his young and raw state, that it has merited more opportunities for him going forward? Would you try to target him maybe a little more in the scope of your game plan if possible?
I would. I mean, again, I'm not there every day, Brownie, and you guys are there in the building. I don't know what kind of information you guys get, so I don't know what he's doing in practice every day. I don't know what his development is like. But you're dealing with a 6'3" kid who moves pretty well. You would think that you could get him more involved in your pass game. But that's a function of what he's doing during the week, whether he's making mistakes, whether he's running wrong routes. I don't know the answer to those questions. But yes, just as a general point of view, for sure, you'd like to see him more involved. And, you hear a lot about, developing chemistry. I think that that's something that you can deal with schematically, particularly against zone. I mean, all these receivers, by the time they get to the NFL, they've run every route known to man. So it's not as if they don't know what the routes are. It's how you put all this together in the context of a multi-dimensional pass game.
I'd like to take a minute and talk about the Bills' defense against Aaron Rodgers. This is the Aaron Rodgers that the Jets get with a healed up Achilles. He does not extend plays the way he once did.
No,
ankle injury.
The ball's coming out. And if it doesn't, he's going down, and he's gone down hard a couple of times. How do teams historically handle quarterbacks who don't move and who are limited in their athleticism?
Well, you pretty much know where he's going to be. He's not going to move a whole lot. They're playing the last couple of weeks the rookie right tackle, Olu Fashanu, who has really, really struggled in pass protection. And I think you've got to attack that. I think you have to attack it with Rousseau one-on-one. I think you have to attack it with stunts. You have to make Fashanu play the game. He really showed he's shown some of the same concerns he had on his college tape at Penn State. He's got core stiffness in his kick slide and his pass set. He reaches and lunges. He's got balance and body control issues. That's an area you have got to attack. And keep in mind, that's the side Aaron Rodgers can see. And when quarterbacks are uncomfortable, as he has been, they tend to overreact to opposing jersey color. So you want to make sure that that's an area in which you attack. I thought it was really interesting last week, for the first time this year, in their dime front, they had Solomon and Rousseau on the outside. They brought Smoot inside. So, I think we'll probably see more of that. But yeah, I think that's one area they have to attack. They've got to make Rodgers feel uncomfortable. I don't think he's overly comfortable with his receivers either. And Rodgers is a quarterback that's always thrown to one-on-ones, and he expects his receivers to win. And that is the NFL, where if it's man-to-man, you expect your receivers to win. And they've not been winning. So, I think obviously the Bills are not a high percentage cover one defense relative to the rest of the NFL. I doubt that's going to change dramatically. That's been Sean McDermott's MO. But you've got to make Aaron Rodgers continue to feel uncomfortable.
One of the things that has been a little bit of a surprise this year, and a pleasant surprise for the Bills, has been the play of Christian Benford. He has been really tough to beat one-on-one. So if Rodgers doesn't like throwing to receivers who are covered in one-on-one, the Bills, and I know Ruel Douglas is on the other side. He's a heady, very veteran, smart player who takes some chances once in a while.
Sure, and he's not a press man guy. He's more of an off coverage.
That's right.
Yeah,
he's an eyes in the backfield kind of corner, even if he's in man coverage. So How does that mesh with what the Jets want to do offensively and Aaron Rodgers and what he wants to do?
I mean, theoretically, it probably helps Rodgers because you're not going to get a lot of press at the line of scrimmage, and maybe you're going to get more free access into the routes, and maybe it's cleaner for him. So the key to me is pass rush. Now, obviously, the Bills are not a huge blitzing team either, and I'm not sure you want to do that. But you're going to have to generate at least pressure. I mean, it's funny. I watched the 49ers tape from last night already, and they didn't get a sack, but Nick Bosa had like 15 pressures. He was around the quarterback literally every time Geno Smith dropped back. That's what you'd have to do in this game. It's not number of sacks. It's making Rodgers feel uncomfortable because no matter how great a quarterback is, and we all know he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, maybe the purest thrower of football we've ever seen, no quarterback likes people around him. That's just the nature of the position. Except maybe your guy, Jim Kelly, Steve, who told me once, I love taking that first shot early in the first quarter, but he was a little nuts, as you know. But no quarterback likes a lot of bodies around him, and Rodgers certainly doesn't at this point in his career.
Looks like it's trending anyway that Taron Johnson could be back in the lineup this week for the first time since week 1. How does that kind of impact Buffalo's front seven there, knowing he's up at the line of scrimmage a great deal? And look, for the first time since week 1, the second level of Buffalo's defense is back to what it was week 1.
Yeah, let me ask you this. If Taron Johnson is back, does Cam Lewis sit or does he become a safety?
I think no, because Taylor Rapp's out of concussion protocol. So I would presume I would presume it's Rapp and Hamlin on the back end, and I think Cam Lewis becomes your third dime safety.
So he would play then instead of Ingram then?
Yes.
Okay. Well, just to talk about some positives, I thought Dorian Williams played his best game as a pro last week. I know they lost, but I thought he played his best game as a pro. I don't know what your thoughts were, but I thought he really played good football last week. And I also thought Bernard's interception was as good a defensive play as you'll see by a linebacker, because you guys, I know people can't see it right now, but he obviously started to carry the interior route by Schultz, and then out of the corner of his eye did a beautiful job of recognizing, I think it was Diggs. Was it Diggs who the ball was thrown to?
Yeah.
And
he dropped the coverage and went back and got back in the throwing lane.
That was, but it was just awareness. Like that was a Luke Kuechly kind of play. That was an awareness play.
Yeah, it was totally preparation and film study. He knew the second crosser was coming, and not only did he turn and spin, he got airborne and caught the ball. All of that in less than a half a second. It was a fantastic play. Now we raved about it the next day as well. That's why you want your best players on the field, because they make plays like that.
No, you're exactly right. It was as good as it gets. And like I said, I thought Williams played really well. So, defensively, look, the Jets have not been able to run the ball very well, and that's another key thing, because as good as Rodgers is and has been in his career, as we said, you really don't want him. I mean, if you're the Jets, you don't want him dropping back 50 times. So you've got to make sure you shut down their run game and then really get bodies around Rodgers. That's critical. And like I said, I think you've got to really attack the right side of the Jets' offensive line. I think you've got to see what Fasciano can do. He's not been very good in his 2 starts.
Yeah. Quickly before we let you go, what kind? I mean, you're expecting Todd Downing as the new play caller to really kind of stick with the run as long as he can.
Yeah.
But what have been the shortcomings in the Jets' run game from what you've seen on tape? Is it linemen not getting to the second level? Is it something? What do you think it is primarily?
Yeah, I mean, there's usually no magic, as you guys know, when you can't run the ball. It's because your O-line is not either winning one-on-one blocks, or they're struggling with the combo blocks working to the second level. It's really one of those two things. I mean, and it's not, the Jets O-line has not been as good as they hoped, given the fact that they signed Tyron Smith, they signed Simpson.
Morgan Moses.
I mean, it just hasn't been as good as they've hoped up to this point.
Okay.
Greg, thanks. Appreciate you. It's good to see you again.
I hope we talk about a win next week, guys.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah,
with you on that one. Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.